muted, right? You can hear me?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Just a heads up, I'm in the UK and we're having a heat wave right now, and I have a fan on full blast because the UK, we don't have air conditioning. So I'm sorry if that messes with the audio, but that's the only thing keeping me cognizant right now. And the other thing I wanted to mention is that for people who are participating after me, if you get made a co-host in order to speak, it makes a ding noise when people come into the page, or into the chat, or into the waiting room. So that's, just ignore that. Okay, so this talk is going to be relatively brief and to the point. I didn't think there was any way that I could compete with what Liz and Nick and Matthew and Kate have presented as far as like this foundational vegan sociology stuff. So instead, I just wanted to take advantage of some insider information I have as the current chair of the Animals and Society section of the ASA, and just provide a little bit of that information for folks who might be interested in serving on council for their respective sections in the future, or for people who are even interested in founding their own sections, because this is something that I think our international group should really be behind, is supporting the growth into other professional associations. So this is kind of it's not at all theoretical piece. It's simply kind of reporting on a survey that I conducted of membership of my section at the beginning of the year. And hopefully this will be informative as far as, all right, I'm trying to get my, whoops, there he goes. Yeah, so anyway, I'm hoping this can be useful for folks who want to know about how to recruit, people who are interested in starting their own section. And also, I think it helps to kind of take away some of the mystery behind these sections, because I know I was a member of my section for many years before I was really in a leadership position, and a lot of this was quite mysterious to me. So just kind of demystifying what it is that we do at the professional level, because it really is, there's nothing really to it except that I think a lot of people are hesitant to start their own sections or to volunteer to be leaders because they don't know what it entails. So I'm just going to offer some of that feedback here. So to begin, an idea of where we came from, the Animals and Society section was founded about 2 decades ago. Yikes, right? In 2001. I've pulled this image with the names on it. I pulled from the very first newsletter, which is available on our website. And these are the folks who were involved, or at least who are listed as being involved in creating this section. And I know there's other people like Jessica Greenbaum who's involved in creating it as well, but for whatever reason, they're not listed on there. So this was a huge collective effort. And really back then they had to work very hard in order to be taken seriously. This is stuff that Liz was just talking about. And to this day, that legacy of having to fight to be recognized is shown in our numbers. We are the second smallest section, I think. Is it Evolution or something? That's the very smallest one. And what this means is each year we have to kind of struggle to survive. I mean, we have a pretty robust group of people in comparison to other places in the world, but we're out of like 40 sections, we're second to last. So we always have to make a case to the ASA about why we deserve to continue to exist. We have a very diverse membership. So we have people who are vegan, we have people who are vegetarian, we have people who are omnivores, they eat animal products. We have people who are in the section because they're interested in ending speciesism, but then we also have folks who are in the section because they're interested in speciesism and want to protect speciesism. And even, of course, we have the folks who are benevolent speciesists who think, you know, we should just treat animals nicer, but don't see a problem in the system of speciesism itself. So, for instance, we have folks in the section who study farming and prioritize farmers and see non-human animals as objects, not necessarily as subjects in their own right. So, indeed, that's another divide that we see among our membership. Those who see animals as research subjects on par with human animals, and then those who just see them as background objects or just objects in general, absent reference. We also have a lot of folks doing social movement, social work, pet therapy, healthcare, environment. So this is in line with what Liz was just talking about as far as the various cousins on the appetizer platter of sociology and veganism. We also have a lot of collaboration with environmental sociology, especially as of late. So for the past few years, we've been doing our annual meeting where we have a joint reception with them. And a lot of our members are not only members of our section, but also members of the environmental section. So this is a major area of overlap for us. So anyway, when I came in to be chair, I knew a little bit about this history, but I think a lot of us, when we're doing this leadership, we kind of guess, we make best guesses about what the section demographic profile is really like. So I thought this would be a chance for us to actually ask people, what is it that brought you to this section? Why are you in this section? What can we do to serve you better? So this is why I think that even if you're not in my ASA section, this could be useful for you in various aspects of your career, wherever you may be. So I administered this survey on SurveyMonkey back in like January, I think. It was before COVID, I know that. And at the time, we had 118 members. This was down from almost 150. We did see a big drop. That was because I was made chair and nobody liked me, just joking. This is really consistent with the overall drop in numbers in the ASA. I mean, we've had recession, austerity, privatization of higher ed, and so it becomes more and more expensive for academics to be associated with the ASA. The membership fees are astronomical. And I'm sorry to say that after my chair position ends, I'm probably going to end my membership. It's just not sustainable. It's too expensive. And then, of course, universities are no longer supporting travel for a lot of folks, and it can be well over $1,000 to attend these meetings. So we're definitely seeing a big drop in the ASA in general, but of course, as being a very small section, we're really in danger when that happens in our little community. But out of 118 people, I was really surprised. I got 60 people who responded. I think I put out a call a few times over the course of a month. Unfortunately, SurveyMonkey only let me get the first 40 responses, and I was not about to pay to get the rest of it. I guess I could use, come to think of it, I could probably use some of the section money to get the rest of those responses, but let me know in the feedback. I think that maybe what I've got here is probably useful for moving forward. So it's been a response rate of about 1/3. It's pretty good. Of course, we have to, before I present the findings, I have to acknowledge that the people who are going to be the most excited about supporting the section are those who are going to pay attention to emails. And I also have to be honest, as a chair, I've been one of the most emaily chairs ever. I email way too much to the listserv. So I think a lot of people are starting to ignore me. So that means that those people who did respond are probably those who are really committed. So we have to keep that in mind, that these may not represent the average member. So most of our, or not most, but almost half of our members were longtime members. So they have definitely this long institutional history with us. A lot of folks are midterm members, and of course the rest are a year or two. So that was pretty cool to see, a lot of people sticking around. This kind of breaks down as you might expect. We have over 1/4 of students, a big chunk are academic. We have a lot of independent researchers. I think there's 1 or 2 people in nonprofits. And then there's people who aren't necessarily sociologists. I saw that some people were coming from other fields, so that was kind of interesting. And I've seen that, by the way, in this conference. There's a lot of folks who aren't necessarily sociologists, but they research and think sociologically. So, you know, we welcome everyone. Then I was interested, you know, what brought people into this section in the first place? A lot of people said, about 1/3 of the people said it was their ASA membership. So when you go to sign up for your membership, it gives you the option of signing up for different sections. And I think that's just the easiest way for people to see, oh, this exists. A good chunk of people came in because their mentor advised them to, and then some people because of their colleagues. And just a tiny bit from promotional materials. So it seems like the ASA, simply by changing the structure of their registration, makes it a lot easier for smaller sections to garner people. So why did people join? And this I made as a ranking. I gave them like 6 different options and asked them to rank it. The number one by and large was the desire to promote animals in society as a legitimate subject in sociology. That was by and far the number one reason people supported and stayed. Networking was a close second. A lot of people, of course, why spend so much money to be an ASA member? One of the main reasons is for academic opportunities. So you can definitely see that surfacing in the responses, mentorship as well. I had several, basically at the end, I had an open-ended question and asked, is there anything else that you want me to know, do you think is relevant? And just kind of a loose thematic coding of this, I found probably the biggest theme, once again, was this notion of supporting the discipline, supporting the subdiscipline, building a community. So I saw lots of comments like this, where it's really important that this exists, and it's really important that we support each other. The word community popped up quite a lot. So this is one of the things where the section, it costs, sometimes it can cost like two $200+ dollars. I think it's like almost $300 now just to be a member of the ASA. This is not including the $1,000+ dollars to go to the conference. So what is going to get people to pay that kind of money for what is increasingly low return when the conferences are so much more difficult to attend? And the one reason that people are saying is this is a community. And I've had people come up to me and say, the only reason I stay in the ASA as a member is for the Animals and Society section. And I'll be honest, that's the same for myself. There was a lot of people who used key terms of activism, animal activism, advocacy, and saw that supporting the Animals and Society section was a means of raising awareness of what happens to non-human animals. So this was not necessarily a human-centered, anthropocentric kind of emphasis, but really saw professionalizing animal studies as a way of helping non-human animals. Legitimizing the subfield, kind of on par with that. People who are doing this research, who are interested in this, by creating this section and by supporting this section and maintaining it in the long term, we're legitimizing the subfield. And I know Zoe had talked about this earlier today, about how people came up to her when they saw it in the program and said, oh, this is a thing. And then lastly, mentorship. I think this bounces off of the community aspect of it, but because we are such a marginalized subfield and because there are very few opportunities, it really, really is important for us to have the space as one that's really welcoming and nurturing to students and to early career folks, and that surfaced quite a bit. So these are the types of things, if you're thinking about leadership in a section, or you want to start your own section, these are the types of things that people are looking for, specifically when we're looking at a marginalized subfield like vegan sociology or animals and society. So I just want to wrap up with a little bit of contextual information about where all that information is going to fit into and going forward making decisions. We are one of the smallest ASA sections, but I also want to reiterate, when I moved to the UK, I became a member of the BSA, the British Sociological Association, and I have a couple of vegan colleagues, and I told them I had joined the animal studies research group here. And they said, oh, well, what about the ASA group? Because I'm chairing it. And I said, oh, well, we've only got like 149 members. What? Because in the BSA, I mean, Britain is such a much smaller country that actually 149 are now 118. That's quite a large number of sociologists to be together under one umbrella. So we do have to keep it in context. Although the ASA section is quite small compared to other places in the world, we're still quite robust. We're also quite active in comparison to some of the other sections like the BSA. Sadly, I don't see too much action happening there. There's been talks behind the scenes in our meeting today about perhaps creating a vegan section in the BSA, because right now there's an animal studies section, but it's not very active. That said, I think the ASA also has a lot to gain from similarly active sections such as the Australian Sociological Associations. I've noticed it's been very, very clear when I started doing this work with Zoe Sutton for the international group that TASA is really, really on top of their stuff. And so I think that one of the main aims of this international session is allowing those networks to develop, and so that we can kind of help one another and help legitimize one another in the larger sociological discipline. I also want to give a little bit of real talk at the very end here. And we have had, one of the reasons we do have room to gain from TASA and from international collaboration is we have had historically difficulties in soliciting volunteers for counsel with the ASA. We have to continuously beg people to participate in social media. So this is a shout out to anyone who wants to help out on that. We have to beg people to help with social media. We have Laura Dana Loy, who's been, bless her, has been doing this for like 10 years, to get people to submit to the newsletter, to get people to submit to the blog. So it seems like there's a lot of dragging of the feet when it comes to this stuff. These are things that we could talk about, like how to motivate people in our sections. Our award submissions tend to be quite robust. We have 4 awards that we now offer in our section, 1 for book, 1 for academic article, 1 for student article, and then 1 for teaching. Our conferences, I've noticed, have been kind of dwindling, and I think a lot of that has to do with the ASA in general and the expenses involved and lack of funding for faculty and students nowadays. But I've also noticed, as someone who was convening this, I'm actually convening it on Tuesday. I was in charge of the papers, and it really wasn't as many as I would have liked to have seen. I ended up having to put out an emergency email to my council to ask them to please, if you can, submit a paper just in case. And the other problem I've seen is that we've been overshadowed by the environmental section. I sadly learned today that the environmental section is going to be going on at the same time as us on Tuesday. And that's going to be a big problem for attendance. And I've also, in the past, we've done that, like I said, joint receptions with environment. And the rationale is let's jump on with environment because they have more legitimacy, credibility in the discipline, and it's great for networking. But what happens is that we simply get overshadowed. So for instance, I was at the conference last year in New York City, and when it was our turn to get up and give our awards, announce our awards, the 180 plus environmental sociologists in the room simply just talked over us. It was extremely rude and belittling and made us all feel like crap and made me really question, do we have something to gain from working with environment, or perhaps we should kind of go our own way and legitimize ourselves instead of kind of hanging on to the coattails of the environment group. But we do have a lot to learn from the environment group because let's not forget, not that long ago, they weren't taken seriously either by sociology. All right, so that's it. I just wanted to summarize here and remind everybody that, you know, the reason me and Zoe felt the need to create this group is because our sections are hotly divided over the commitment to speciesism. I'm sure that not the majority are vegan. I would say I'd be surprised if the majority were even vegetarian. But the cool thing is that most of the people who responded were supporting the section, continuing to support the section for altruistic reasons, to build community, to support students, and to actually promote animal rights for a lot of folks. So this is actually some good news to end on. And I hope that this motivates and encourages folks who want to go on and do this work themselves. And obviously, I'm always here to offer feedback and help in any way I can. Thanks, everybody.
All right, awesome. Thank you so much, Corey. Does anybody have any questions for Corey? You can please post them in the chat. But I feel like that's a really great overview of some of the benefits of putting together a section like Animals in Society. I know that Sarah and I have been encountering many of the same challenges in regards to paper submissions and certainly volunteers. Sarah can probably speak to that too. And we're lucky that we have a core group that we're building, so that's great. I'm really just buying time for everyone to put questions in the chat right now. So.
It's not obvious at all, Rochelle. You're doing a great job.
Just vamping over here. Yeah, so Zoe said she'd be interested to hear about how the collaborations with the environmental section go. Do we find conflict? Corey?
Is she asking you or me?
I don't know. So?
Probably generally, maybe?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that for me, like for instance, this year when it was on me to chair the conference, I was a little annoyed also at our joint reception last year that they were serving non-vegan food, and I grabbed a pizza bite and put it in my mouth assuming it was vegan, and my friend says, that ain't vegan, and I went, what? It surely wasn't. And I went and asked somebody and they said, well, it's vegetarian. I was like, you've got to be kidding me. This is an environmental group and you've got the animal people here. Mm-hmm. But I will say that afterwards I reached out and said, you know, can we please make sure that it's vegan next time? And they were conducive to that. They said, all right, if you do the work and you find someone or someplace, then, which turned out to be impossible, by the way. Yeah. But they're open to us participating. We've been doing it for a while. I think maybe Liz can offer a little bit more feedback on this. But the problem is they're just so big and we're so little that we just kind of get forgotten about. We're lost in the hoopla, the shadows.
I think because the CSA section that Sarah and I founded is only, I think we're in our third year right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're starting our third year now.
So we do have, I think, probably a pretty good group, but again, we're still relatively young. So I think we probably have a lot to learn from the ASA section and certainly the TASA section as well. So that was a really amazing talk and gave us something to think about. Thank you, Zoe, or thank you, Corey. Yeah. It still feels very early for me. I'm sorry, folks. All right. So any other questions for Corey or conversation around this?
I think me and Zoe are like Tweedledee and Tweedledum. So I don't blame you for mixing us up.
Oh, thank you for your compassion and kindness. Yeah, and Liz also mentions that all the sections are on the same day: culture,
Yeah.
environment, social movements, and animals. And we have found that with the Canadian Sociological Association as well. And so one of the things that we're advocating for, certainly next year when it's in Calgary, British Columbia, Calgary, Alberta, if anybody wants to come out to beautiful Calgary, is making sure that those sections are on different days to try and certainly capture some of that overlap, but also try and address some of the potential challenges with conflict that way. So, yeah, I think that